good people, Dennis and the rest of focus on Liberia, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, on focus on Liberia. It's been a while since I've been on your platform. I'm just too uncomfortable with this noise.
That's true. Yeah, we started already. People moving, so we can't. Nothing we can do. Yeah.
But we can have some places that
I think it's okay now. Sometimes it's okay. We already started rolling now.
No, you can. Don't worry. We can be in a better place.
Okay. So the senator is up.
So we will be live. We
Hello.
will move the senator to the, I mean, I think under the Palawa Hall somewhere around. He is not comfortable with the noise from the background. So keep following us. We are in the beautiful yard of Senator Conmany. We said this is his private home in Monrovia. This is around the Dupont Road area, and we are, taking the camera to his Palawa Hall. I'm sure he is not comfortable with the noise around here, and the road is just closer to the fence. But again, my name is Prince, and this is Focus on Liberia TV. We do this normally on days like this when we've come to get historic information. Those are historic days: April 14, 1979, April 12, 1980, and maybe you talk about April 6. 1996, you talk about the autopause in October, and there are a lot of time in Liberia here we would like to talk about. We would like to hear from those who have information on those historical days and could tell us exactly why we went like that, and then how can we correct some of those mistakes. And so just keep following me. This is Prince Moba's presentation of this live broadcast here in Liberia. We are in West Africa. Here in Liberia, we are around the Dupont Road area where the senator has his private home. And of course, this is a beautiful yard. You can just take a glance at that. The swimming pool is behind here. This is the back of the yard, as a matter of fact. And of course, we are bringing you this. Many of you may have seen the building before when you were in Liberia or came here to see the senator. You say, "Oh wow, that's Senator Wesseh." Yeah. So yes, thanks for joining. Thanks for following. Keep following us. We're going to be here for the next 30 minutes or so to chat with the senator of River G County, Senator Conmany Wesseh. He's been in this advocacy for so many years from a youth. Up to now, he's still an activist. He's someone who stands for social justice, the right of people, and that is his passion. That's what he's been doing for so many years. So it is good to be joining us. You might be joining us from somewhere in the US or somewhere in Europe, or somewhere in Asia or any part of the world. Thanks for following. Thanks for joining. Just a few minutes from now, we're going to be joining Senator Wesseh to give us his thought on this historic April 14, 1979. You might be aware, you know what happened that day here in Liberia, in Monrovia, specifically in Monrovia, when a group of demonstrators organized by a progressive group at the time called PAL. PAL is the Progressive Alliance of Liberia. It was headed by the late Gabriel Matthew, that is at the time, and the protest was staged. And of course, someone is coming here. Say, please extend my greetings to him. Of course, this is Josephine Winnie Ade is saying I should extend our greeting to the senator. Yes, he will hear it. We're going to extend that. But thanks for joining us. Thanks for following FOL, Focus on Liberia. This is Liberia. We are around the Dupont Road area, like I said, and this is the private home of Senator Conmany Wesseh. We just entering the Palawa Hall. We are about to start to rejoin the live interview. We were asking questions, he was answering them, but he was not just comfortable with the background and the noise from the road. The road passes right around his fence. But it's good to give you some glimpse of the senator's house. Some of you have not seen a house before, you have not been there. You might be following us, like I said, from the Netherlands, anywhere in Europe, in America, in Asia. Of course, you've seen the house. We are in the Palava Hall. The senator is nicely dressed in his country gown. According to him, this outfit was presented to him on his just ended birthday, the 70th birthday, I'm sure, or 70th birthday. Okay, Senator, thanks for rejoining us. The viewers around the world are greeting you. I mean, some of them are glad to see you. I mean, to even see you, yeah. So I was asking you, I was just about to ask the next question. Some of you have been read about, I mean, in so many articles I've been writing by journalists, by other writers, by yourself, by politicians, but for the benefit of others who might be younger than others, who is Senator Conmany B. Wesseh? What is your upbringing?
Well, you call my name. I come from River G County. But when I was born, it wasn't River G. When I was born 70 years ago, that land space was called Palipo. The town in which I was born is still called Tigireke. At that time, it was called the Eastern Province of Liberia. There were provinces, there were 6 counties. There were 5 counties in Liberia. And so what we know today as Grand Jide was not existing. There was Grand Jide, that was what is today River G. All together was called the Eastern Province, that was controlled from Maryland. So that was where I was born. Then in 1964, that county, 4 counties were created. Grand Jide was one of them. So you had Grand Jide, you have Bonk, you have Nimba, you have Lofa. The 4 Hebrew children, as they joked and called them, came out of the Eastern Province, the Northern Province, and those were the things that came out of those provinces. And so 64 we became River G, we became Grand Jide, and until 2000, when we created River G. So with River G created, we now had the 10th county of Liberia. We had a couple of counties. We became the 14th county of Liberia, because River G and Bapulu were the last. That make us 15 counties in Liberia now. River G 14, Bapulu 15. River G historically became the very first county that was created out of the people's own petition to the legislature. Before that time, all counties in Liberia were created, or let's say the first 3 counties were part of the foundation counties. Then there was the Maryland, and to make them up to 5. Then you had, after that, then you had the 4 new counties to make them to 9. After those 9 counties, then you had Bombing, you have Magidi, you had Bombing County, you got, and you have that made him 13. You know, so those out of, then the next 2 counties were added for us to be 15 counties. So I can say that we are very happy to set that example, that we set that record, that we mobilize ourselves to create what we have. But back to the question you asked, so I come from, well, I came from Eastern Province to now River G County. And I started school there in Palipo, in Tigrikin, and I left to go to Cape Palmas, people for a year, Cape Palmas High School in Harper City for the next years. And before I could graduate from high school, I went, I went on to the vocational school in Ikepa.
Okay.
So between Ikepa and Bassa, I did the 1 year I needed to take the national examination. There was a 3-year vocational school, but they were not giving diplomas in order to go to college or to carry a diploma, a high school graduation diploma. You had to be accepted to a regular high school. And I was the first ever from that vocational school, the Liberian Student Educational Training Center, to do that.
Yekepa.
And in Yekepa, yeah, to do that.
Wow.
Because I wanted to have the high school diploma that my friends and myself were struggling for. But because by the time I came to the vocational school, I had to drop. I had to in order to do my 3 years to study electricity. So I'm an electrician and very proud electrician, trained as an electrician.
Do you still practice?
Came to, yeah, if you, I don't do it for a living now, but I did it for a living. I did it to support myself in college.
Wow.
I was a student worker as an electrician as of the time that I was 19 years old. And so I did that, completed. I worked, when I came to Monrovia, I didn't come looking for a job. I came I was employed on the day of my graduation. And I will tell you that ever since that day, I've never been unemployed. Thank God. I have always worked as an electrician, as a manager, as a creator, as, international civil servant, I went from the lowest ground level. I always like to remember, and people ask, my father was a paramount chief. He rose in the rank of chieftaincy until he became paramount chief. In fact, he was, it's a very interesting part where he was a paramount chief. At some point, the people they said they wanted people to go to their chiefs to be educated, to be able to read and write, as they said. And so there was a contestation. And I remembered very well, my father decided that he would respect the rule of his people, so he would not contest. And they brought this gentleman who was a school teacher, and he and another person from our family who could read and write to go in the contestation. So my father then went back to our hometown and made up his mind that education would not miss his children. So he and others put together to create the Tigrikin Public School in Tigrikin, which was the town that was the city, was the town that created Fishtown. Fishtown is now the city, the capital city of River G. But the history of that fish town came from Tigrican. The people of Tigrican took 4 young men. They went up near and set up a village, a little village. That is that village that today has become Fishtown, the capital city of River G. The central part of River G, any part of River G you come from, that is the place to go, that is central. So my town, Tigrican, is the creator of Fishtown. And our family was one of the young people that created the fish town. So fish town is both my town created by my family and is also the center of River G. So I'm in the middle of the River G story.
Great.
My mother, of course, was a wonderful traditional performer. You know, if you see, never mind the noise in it's people were trying to do every day, fix up a little place in the yard, and I have a few carpenters around who are trying to do something.
Yeah, it's
To beautify using our local material.
that's great.
I said too much more than you asked for.
Yeah.
But
So thank you so much. That's why we
the
let
one is
have
cool. Yes.
those kinds of conversation with you. So that we say again once more, if you just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia Television Live. We here this afternoon in Liberia. The time in Liberia is exactly 22 minutes after 1 o'clock p.m. in Liberia. This is Monrovia, Pingsway area in Dubodro. We've come to speak with another we say on this issue of April 14, 1979. Today is April 14, 2023. It's 44 years since 1979. So, Senator, we said, let us begin the conversation on this note. Why was April 14, 1979 riot or demonstration? Now, it's named in Liberia's history, West Riot. Why was that on that day?
Why was it on that day? I think I would help rephrase the by by just broadly asking what I know about it.
Okay. What do you know about it? Yeah.
What do I know about this historic day that we keep talking about, April 14? April 14, 44 years ago, was the day on which peaceful Liberians decided or joined in it depends where you stand, you call it, it was called by the organizer, the principal organizer, they call it demonstration, they call it protest, and they call it a march. What happened was G. Bacchus Matthews, who headed the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, had been, he'd come back home. Before he got here, there was the Movement for Justice in Africa, which was led by Dr. Tubana Tipote, and which was really involved with working with workers, working with students in Liberia, involved in real mobilization of the people, the conscientization processes, and dealing with the struggles of people in Africa and around on the basis of justice. Bacchus came, and the two progressive movements worked very well together. So I recall that the usual anniversary of Moja was always on 21st of March, the anniversary of the Sharpeville Massacre. The Sharpeville Massacre was the one that happened in 1961 in South Africa, where apartheid South Africa police, when they shot Africans who were demonstrating against carrying passes, they were told to, wherever you go, you must carry a pass. So people began to revolt against it, and they went and shot these people. In doing so, it was that Sharpeville massacre of March 21 got total international condemnation. And so in many countries, people began to celebrate, or not celebrate, just mark that day. In Liberia, at the University of Liberia, the Movement for Justice in Africa was founded in 1973 at a program. So Moja began to celebrate to mark March 21st. So it was the anniversary of that day. It was in 1970, it was the anniversary of the time that Moja was founded in 73 to 14 years ago, on March 21, 1979.
Okay.
March 21, 1979, which was an anniversary of Moja at the Sports Commission on Broad Street, that Marcus Matthews, he had been in the country not too long. Paul was now, really bubbling. The Progressive Alliance of Liberia was mobilizing. It's like the focus of his work was always dealing with the people, ordinary people, as they would put it, street hawkers, young unemployed youth, good number of youth workers, mainly youth, where Moja was emphasizing students and workers. But the two worked together. So it was the Moja anniversary. We were at that anniversary. I was playing a role. At the time, I had been a graduate of the University of Liberia. I had been president of the University of Liberia Students Union. So in the year before 1978. So I was very well known in the country. And Moja leaders asked me on that particular day to introduce G. Marcus Matthews. I was acting as the MC.
Okay.
The MC for the
Your
anniversary day at that program. And I introduced G. Marcus Matthews. And he was a fiery speaker. Very brilliant young man. He wore these beards, not the way the type of beards we wear now. He always trimmed his beard. He always wore, good suits, well-tailored coat suits. He always argued that, people who are involved in political work must present themselves very well. So that was his dress style, which is very different from the dress style that Dr. Tupana Tipote was now selling, wearing Liberian clothes, African dress, wearing the cheapest possible sandals, locally made by Liberian. Then there was and these are some of the very minor contracts that have been exploited, but they were not They were not fundamental. The real issue was on that day. Let me come back to it. On that day, I introduced Bacchus Matthews. G. Bacchus then delivered his speech to the anniversary program. The key element of his speech was that our people have had enough. The families of the ruling elite exploiting our people further, and now they want to increase rice because the price of rice, because the biggest rice producer, rice importer is the family of the Talbot family. So they want to increase the price of rice so that they can profit. And we would not allow that to happen. We must demonstrate, we must protest against that increase of rice. So in order for them not to benefit from it. There was no discussion with the Moja leaders. It was a surprise. We hadn't talked about demonstrations and things like that before.
And that was on your anniversary?
On Moja anniversary.
Yes, I remember Moja.
The statement was made. And once that statement was made, on that day of March 21, 1979, the government took it up. Oh, these racketeers were going to cause trouble. They're causing this trouble. They are that. So the popularization of April 12, of April 14, because he announced, he didn't just say there will be a demonstration, he said there will be a demonstration on Saturday, April 14. From March 21 to April 14 was how many? 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, the people who mobilized unwittingly, they did not think they were the one and making all the talk on the radio. At that time, there were only 2 radio stations in the country. There were maybe 1 or 2 community radios, like in Yekepa there was LNR, Liberian, like Lamco Radio in LRN, Lamco Radio Network or something like that. I think that was. I don't know whether Firestone had, but it was 2 radio stations. One was ELBC, the other was ELWA. And those 2 radios were under the direct influence of the government. It was the government Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Information, the Ministry of Justice, the police that were making the announcement that the government would not allow the holding of any demonstration of any sort. And anybody who comes out will be dealt with according to their law, as they said, according to their law, according to law. And the powerful ministers, they were standing up and making these threats. Mr. Matthews and his organizers stood the ground. At that time, during the same time, I was very busy.
Why do you think the warning from the government was a form of, mobilizing or was a form of popularizing the demonstration? Why do you think so?
Well, they were basically, they said the things. And the more they said it, people wanted to know what would happen. And the popular organizations, the popular voices, were the voices that were led by the Progressive Alliance of Liberia and the Movement for Justice in Africa. Movement for Justice in Africa, you know, their clientels and the forces they mobilized most were forces that worked together. I just said there were workers, students, there were youth, mainly unemployed youth on the other hand, but all of them had the same interest. So when the government said that they would deal with these people who wanted to express their democratic rights, everybody wanted to see it happen. They wanted to see how it would happen. So if you ask me the question why they did what said, and it was the government that helped to popularize it even more.
So some account has said that power leaders at the time after the demonstration, even Liberian citizens who followed the demonstration at the time, has said, power has consistently said that they did not, they were not involved of violence, but rather it was the police that began to shoot at them. What do you make of that? Do you also agree with that view?
I because I was maybe if you go back, whereas you know that when the thing happened, the government decided that there were ringleaders of the demonstration.
Were you one of those?
The government announcement.
But you were not.
Would you just pay attention?
Go ahead, sir.
The government announced that on the day 1, day 2, by the first day, the government began to say the demonstration, the first thing was organized by Tobana Tipute and Bacchus Matthews and stuff. But Tipute was not even in Monrovia at the time. He was doing his Susuku work at that time, involving rural farmers, building and helping them to empower themselves in rural communities. So he was way in Grand Jide. He was coming back from Grand Jide, coming to town when the government began to do macing and this and that. That was day 1. Day 2.
After the protest?
Yes. Oh, after this is day 2. Day 1 is April 14.
Okay.
Day 2 is April 15. By April 15, the government said they had their facts now together. They had the ringleaders were 5 ringleaders. G. Bacchus Matthews was one. Oscar Jaiquia, who was the Secretary General of the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, was the other. There was John Stewart, John Stewart. John Stewart was a very vocal, powerful rallying guy who knew how to rally people. They knew him. He would go and make all of the various rally calls when you say when issues are moved, when the Amandla in Gawetu, the things that you hear, all these stuff around. Bati, oh Bati, the guy who could do it better, faster, move effectively.
At that time?
At that time was a gentleman, he's still around. You know, Damon Stewart. There was another young man who was he ran a newspaper, a very, very powerful medium that was called the Apfa Fanga, All People's Freedom Alliance Fanga drum. When that, and you won't believe it, it's not like today that you have what you have. This was a guy, these were people running, people using mimeography machines. I don't know whether some of the people listening to this, to us today know what they call mimeography machine. But that was how papers were produced, leaflets were produced. These are how the information about the demonstration went around. So his name was James Yazia. He was the fourth person. Of course, the fifth was your humble servant. I had been the president of the University of Liberia Students Union. Easily the most popular student and youth leader in the country. And then I started to reorganize. We like to call it reorganize, but really we had then decided to form what we now call the Liberian National Students Union. It was that which we were forming. We went to historical records to show that there had been an attempt of a student group that will be called a national organ. But it did not work. Under Tubman, it virtually was killed. So by 1978, when I was president of the Student Union, building on what others had started, we decided that we will form, even after I left office. In fact, one of the mandates would be, one of our things was to make sure, agenda was to make sure we created National Students Union. So we were off Cottington. We got support from many sources, including the government, to set up the Liberian National Students Union at Cottington. So while we were there, it's there that we wrote a message to the president, to the executive mansion, that the president should not interfere with the demonstration. It was the government should allow the people to express their democratic right to demonstrate against the increase in the price of rice, and that was a constitutional right that should not be stopped, that the people were, so long as they were peaceful. So that message, it was a cablegram, I still remember.
And that was on April 14th, you shared that communication with the government?
We sent that communication the night before,
April.
On the 13th of April. We sent that message from Banga, because we were having this conference at Covington, and I signed it. So I guess it's one of those things that the government last remember, that the person who was telling us to stop, to allow the demonstration, is the president of the Students' Union. We had guests, international guests at this conference. We had a gentleman from the Student Union of, then it was called the USSR, they used to call it the Student Council of the USSR, of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, came from Moscow. Then we had student leaders from the All Africa Students Union. We had, two of them were actually Senegalese. One came from the IUS, from the International Union of Students, with the Russian, and the other came from the All Africa Students Union. And my friend and brother, Dusty Wolukoli, represented us at the conference in Benin. So they came from the conference straight to Cottington with these international guests. We also had an international guest who was the keynote speaker, Kenneth Best. Kenneth Best had been the last of the student leaders who had to flee the country, or who ended the running of a student organization that was across the country when he had to leave the country. So for 14 years, that organization existed, ended in 1964. Until 1979, there was no national organization. And the name the new constitution, everything was created at that meeting in we have been working on it, and we outdoored it at Cottington. And on that day, April 14, I was installed. I was elected and installed as president of the Liberia National Student Union, this new formation. And the former president then, or leader or chairman at the time they used to call it, Kenneth Best, was working for the All Africa Conference of Churches in Nairobi. He was invited and he was flown in. I remember we got the money to buy his ticket. That money was given to us by President Talbot when he came to that conference. So we're at a meeting when hell broke loose. The threats are detecting, and we on the other hand sending these messages, stop. 1979, April 14, that morning, we decided to continue our activities, and so we did not stop until we had the elections and I was installed into office with a good number of my colleagues. In fact, one of the fellows who was is a reverend now, Dixon, is in the United States. I had not seen him for over 40 years. Only last year I saw him. There were many others, very active student leaders around at the time. I named Dusty Wolokole, I named Ability, not Musa, one of Musa's cousin, Khalifa Ability. They were from Cotton, and we came from the University of Liberia. And we decided to return to Monrovia. And as we were coming, the issue was bloodshed all over.
Were there death confirmed on April 14th?
Yes.
Do you have any idea?
Yes.
What was that?
We had, first of all, we had set up teams in the city going around town. Dr. Sawyer, who did not come to Cottington, was heading a team that were going around to keep record of things that were happening, going to hospitals and clinics, wherever. In the various reports, various accounts that were compiled, there was a suggestion that there was estimates of about 140 people.
That
got killed.
The government confirmed only 40.
Yeah.
The government of Liberia confirmed that only 40 people were killed. And the first shot were fired at PHP. No, Buzequara Junction, coming down onto Executive National. Just where the gas station is, somewhere around there. That's where the first shot was fired.
Why did the police fire?
The other thing is that there was a gentleman who was the head of what you call 102 today, the active police stuff. He, on that day, they all took out their long gun. And on that day, coming down from the Ministry of Information, as our reports showed, because when that happened, I was at Cottington. But the different reports that came to us now showed that Mr. Pritchard mistakenly shot himself in the leg.
Who was that?
The 102 now.
He was the deputy for operation at the time.
Yes, at that time. I do not know specific, because there was there was another group of, and these were younger soldiers. I mean, younger
Police officers.
Yeah, one of them was a good friend of ours from the university. He was they had begun to recruit university graduates in the police, and my friend, Dalmida, Joachim Dalmida, I still remember his name. They were now. There was another younger fellow called Cooper, and they too, they were leading the various groups of the police that was attacking. And these people have been playing in the hand now of the right wing of the True Party, of the ruling elite. Because President Talbot himself was petrified because I saw him afterwards when we returned and we were arrested. We met with him, and the way he was telling his story, he was blaming everybody, including Abapo and this and that person. But the police were not taking command from the right wing, the extreme right of the True Party. And their crime, their quarrel with Talbot was that they said Talbot was too weak. He was allowing too much, talking about allowing this progressive movement. Because Mr. Talbot, by the time, and many people don't know that, he actually wrote a letter of membership in the Movement for Justice in Africa. So Mr. Talbot was a card-carrying member of the Movement of Justice in Africa.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So I saw the letter myself. He was keeping his card, but I saw the letter. Because he believed, by the way, in what Moja was saying, that you can't do anything without, if you cannot, you must be associated with justice to be honorable, to be everything we did, whether even to fight corruption is a fight for justice, to ensure that people, we share our responsibilities to make sure that we work and share development is a sense of justice. When we fight for freedom in South Africa, it's ensuring justice. When we fight for freedom in the Portuguese territories that we're fighting against colonial Portugal, whether in Mozambique or Angola or Equatorial Guinea, Cape Verde, and so we're fighting for justice, fighting for with any support of the people of Namibia against the South African colonial domination in what we call Namibia today, that was called Southwest Africa. You're fighting for justice. So Talbot agreed with that. When we support the Sahrawi people in Southwest Africa, we're fighting for justice.
All right, Senator, thank you. So, once again, my name is Prince Moba, and we are in the conversation with Senator Conmany. We said this is an exclusive interview here on Focus on Liberia TV Live. We are located in the U.S. state of Atlanta, Georgia, and of course, we're here in Liberia. My name is Prince, bringing this live interview. Senator, the next question I'd like to ask you is, looking at for the 4 years since 1979, do you think the reason provided by parks, members, or leaders, do you think that reason is justified for the demonstration at that time? Or has April 14 changed anything? Did they resolve anything?
I think that people want to express...
Or did they get things worse? That's a second part of the question.
No, I'm not going to allow that we will phrase the question like that. The first question is whether people have the right to express
Was it
themselves.
justified?
Whether people have the right. It's a right.
Okay.
People express a right. The Constitution says we must do it peaceably. And there is no evidence that it was the demonstrators who started the violence. No. They expressed a right. Any expressing the right, any expression of rights, sometimes it does not mean you must have all of the facts available, not all of the facts. It's just a perception sometimes you can fight against. So what society does is we have these mediatory forces and opportunities that allow us to sit together and mediate. And when they said that there was going to be an increase in price of rice, I told you, from the Moja side, the Moja leaders who were economists and had a certain level of education and stuff, did not support the thing because of the veracity of what was said, because the report was only what was called a government decision was only in a report for the ministry, from the Ministry of Agriculture. So when we had an opportunity to discuss, the point was made clear to
Moja's leadership.
Yeah, the Moja people met with power leaders.
Okay.
And we began, and that's how Moja leaders began to discourage
the protests.
The
demonstration.
And Albert Port was discouraging not because he thought what was being said was not true. That was not his. It was that the way he saw the reaction of the government and the right-wing elements within the government, they would respond with violence. And that was the same message that Moja leaders had. And there was an understanding being reached. And Talbot was engaged. And President Talbot began to then talk about calling off the demonstration. And he said, I want you to call off the demonstration because I've heard what you said. I want to listen to the consumer and the producer, the importer, all the five forces that must mediate. I need to listen to them. That was how he spoke. Was how he. And so Matthews said, okay, what we will do, it will not be, it became semantical, that it will be a march. He said, it will be a march. We will not demonstrate. Since you are afraid that demonstration, I will not protest. We'll call a march. So, but to call off whatever it was required access to information. We needed to have, or he needed to have, the radio stations, the ELBC and ELWA. The extreme elements interpreted to agree for him to be using those in media to call up as a weakness on the part of the president. The president should get, the man just should go around the same way they're doing their leafleting. He should write the leaflet and tell the people, nobody turn out. But the more the government call and say, if you do it, we will do this. On that day, that morning, before 6 o'clock, throngs of people were walking from New Town, walking to the headquarters of PAL that was on Center Street. On Gurley Street. On Gurley Street. So people began to come. And those who were coming from Cinco and And people were now going to Gurley Street, passing through Johnson, passing through the Boozy Quarter Junction I'm talking about. Yes, passing through there to go, and it was there that the police built a barricade, and they thought that the people were coming to the mansion. And they shot. So Pritchard shot in his own leg, mistakenly, actually holding the gun, and he shot in his own leg. And these young guys now who were leading the police units, they said, let's move on them. And once they attacked the demonstrators or the marchers, they began to run. Camp Johnson Road today, there was no shop on Camp Johnson Road that had iron gates or anything, nothing. There were glass windows, modern places, Broad Street, all of Broad Street, Center Street, Benson Street, all those streets, Ashmore Street, were streets that did not have iron gates. There were glass windows. And so when the government attacked and the people began to run, they began to run into shops and to loot.
The marchers or the demonstrators?
The demonstrators began to loot. The police then had justification, and they said they were now stopping. That's when they began to go after them and started to shoot at them.
So this brings me to the other part of the question I'm asking. So can we say that April 14 may matter worse? Can we say so?
No, I would never say that.
Okay.
I would never say that. What I want to say, what we should say, is that it was a stage in our life where people wanted to show that as part of our constitution. Because if the constitution did not anticipate that people will have a right to express themselves, they will not put it there. They put it there so that those who have power will only accept that the constitution allows that. Our people were not prepared to accept that people, other Liberians, had a right to express themselves. So they reacted. And when this attack, and that's the significant part, the other significant part, is within the ruling elite, there are contending forces. They all do not agree how to approach a given situation. The military, as the marchers were on, did not participate in the shooting spree.
The military.
The military. It was the government. So Talbot began to call for the military to come in. When he was calling the military, he was calling the Army Chief of Staff, who was called Cowboy Johnson, called him, please come. You know, these people want to cause trouble. They want to take more or less that they, because around Africa, there were coup d'etats. So he thought by having the Army Chief of Staff by him, the Army Chief of Staff would not participate or lead people to overthrow him. So he had him with him, his wife, and as he himself said to us when we surrendered, he said he had Cowboy Johnson in his bedroom. He said, stay here with Mavic. They saw no soldiers participating, and the people who were reporting to him now were saying, the soldiers, you gotta watch them. They are not participating. They are not supporting all of our actions.
All right. So some Liberians still blame the progressive and power, the Progressive Alliance, and those who quote unquote call themselves progressive for what happened on April 14, 1979. They are supposed to blame you for that. What do you make of people who have those kinds of thing, or who share those kinds of opinion? What do you make of that? Do you agree with them?
I don't agree with them, but I do not deny that they
They also believe that you were the cause of April 12, 1980, because it was the 1979 riot that gave rise to the coup in 1980. What do you think? Did they influence anything in 1980? Did the 1979 influence anything in 1980?
Of course.
It did.
I mean, the 1979, I told you, the military did not intervene. They did not support the
action of the police.
The action of the police.
To have discharged liability.
They did not.
Okay.
So the people began to see the soldiers as their friends. Mr. Taylor, Mr. Talbot was in the middle of all of this. In this thing now, Mr. Talbot was seen as a weak person. He himself set up a special investigating committee on April 14, headed by Natty Brunel. It's the Natty Brunel Commission, which then began to review the demonstration, was bound in the making, because in the society there have been a lot of disgruntled youth. People were suffering. People perceive that the government was predominated by people who wanted everything for themselves. They were involved with, they wanted to, they were in business, they were greedy, they were that and that. So they found that, some of the words were not exactly the same words, but the commission was key to a view that something was fundamentally wrong in the society, and people needed to do something about it. And the president was asked to demonstrate that he was ready to work for change. So he began to change members of the cabinet. But he couldn't go far enough because of the extreme side, the right-wing leaders of the party, who then felt that any further he went in introducing changes would be a sign that he is truly, truly weak.
The President Talbot.
Talbot was truly, truly weak.
Okay, so two questions.
So he couldn't go far.
We can wrap up. So Senator Wesseh, the lack to ask, a lot of questions keeps coming. A lot of questions keep coming in my mind as we answer them one by one, but we can't spend a whole day on the interview. So two questions, maybe we'll give Ras one. We're looking at for the 4 years now. Thank God now you're in the legislature after all of those that we went through. What can we point out to as lessons learned from what we went through 1979, 1980, 1989, 2000s, and the 1996? All of those, many people can say our problem started when the progressives, encouraged people to get into the street on April 14, 1979. Others can say our problem started when the government did not listen to the core or the crowd of the citizens. If you also read between the lines, the increment announced by government was just about $8 increment. If I'm getting the mathematics right, from $22 to $30, it's about $8. Difference there. So what have we learned from all that we've gone through?
Well, what we learned is that, mind you, what happened came 1980. No matter how you put it, people learned something.
Really?
People learned something. Unfortunately, is the extent to which we practice what we have learned or imbibed what we've learned.
Unfortunately.
In 1980, exactly 1 year after April 14, when 140 people were killed, was the coup d'etat. When the coup took place, the president of Liberia plus his military commander around him was killed. The president was killed. The young coup makers, very young, most of them under their 20s, under their 30s. Most of them. The young coup makers arrested government officials. And we have to link it to what happened later on. 13, they arrested nearly all senior government officials that were in the country at the time. But 13 of them were taken for trial. 14, one was set free. 14 of them were taken for trial. These 14, it's significant to mention their names or their titles. The Minister of Justice were put, and the charges of the military was rampant corruption, abuse of power, violation of the Constitution of the Republic of Liberia. There were 4 main charges. So some related. So they put them on trial. When they brought the Minister of Justice, they asked, were you not here when corruption was taking place? What do you have to say about the corruption? That I wasn't part of it. All right, fine. The Minister of Finance, what you got to say about this? He went on. He was put aside. The Chief Justice of the Republic, that the courts have been abused. No, all those things there, we wanted to do it, but the Toba family, they were doing this and they were not listening to us. Then the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the President pro tempore, who happened to be the President's brother, the senior leaders in the True Party government, the Secretary General of the True Party, every level, the 13 officials covered the. After they all said they did nothing, they knew nothing about it, everything was by the Tolbert regime, by President Tolbert, they said, okay, thank you all, let's go. And they planted poles and put them on the poles. And that's how they were executed. And you would have thought that they who did it had learned something. Mm-hmm. No, they did not. Because the first attack on the social movement was the student movement, was the attack on me. I, as president of the student union, led the first group of citizens to the executive mansion to say to the military, you could not continue to do the same things that you accused the others of doing. And it was, and that they should prepare to get back to the barracks. Those were the key crimes that I committed. The regime had me arrested, detained, carried me to the maximum security prison at Post Taki. Yeah.
All right. So
they did not listen.
Okay.
They did not listen, and exactly the same things they began to carry them out. Massive corruption, nepotism, abuse of public office. You know, it gets
Violation of the Constitution.
violation of the Constitution. They did that, and one of the people who was collaborating with them, Charles Taylor, was a good friend of the military, took the legitimate grievances of the people, used those grievances to get us into the war. And Taylor did not learn anything himself. By the way, that war took about 250,000 lives and millions of dollars of property destroyed. Mr. Taylor, even as he went on to become president, by failing and all the people being with so much death and destruction, other group of Liberians took up arms because that's what Taylor used. But Mr. Doe, if you think that it was brutal the way he killed the 13 people, he got killed even in a more brutal manner. That is on tape. Was there any lesson learned by Mr. Doe or those who were following Doe? Not much. We continue with corruption, with abuse of office, and this and that. And the next thing we saw, I said, multiple armed groups fighting to get rid of Charles Taylor. In the end, Mr. Taylor is stuck with 50 years of imprisonment, and you think that was enough? We had elections, and we have a regime in power that is also dealing with this same. And today, shamelessly, people have forgotten that it was rampant corruption, abuse of public office, violation of the Constitution, nepotism, and all of these things that have led to that is it.
We still can learn anything.
People, but would I conclude that we haven't learned anything? I said no. There are growing numbers of people who are learning something. But a few who just don't want to learn, just like the dull student, they will always be there.
Do you think those few, unfortunately, are those few who should be, who are in public offices to institute the lesson learned or what we learned, and to trickle it down? Do you think so? Because, from what I'm getting...
I think that the truth is that there is the very few who are giving our country a very bad name. That very few are loud, very loud. That is that very few that are very, very ignorant. They are ignorant. They're too dull to pick up these lessons of history. In fact, they get angry when you talk about them. Then you have arrogance. So somebody is very ignorant, not prepared to learn, and yet they go around with their shoulders high and very arrogant and they think they know everything. You ask them about April 14 today, They will tell you a story. Oh man, the thing was happening, that people brought trouble. Everything was alright. Like, this man hasn't even read his primer properly. He has not read civics book. He doesn't know how government functions. He gives himself the power to indict others because there are people still raising questions. And that those who dare ask questions should be punished.
I like that part of your response. People still asking questions. The same question asked in 1979.
Yes.
Those questions still been asked.
The questions will be continuously asked unless there are answers. So long as you have life, you have to always ask questions and find solutions, not just ask and sit.
How do we get there?
That's what you're doing. That is why today, when I go to Sunday school, and when I go to church, one of the areas that I like is to listen to young people talking. The other day, there was a signature program for political parties. I think 26 political parties signed the Farmington Declaration. A young lady, young woman, 23 years old, who was 3 years old when the peace agreement was signed, who was being carried in a wheelbarrow and thought that was a toy when their parents were running
from bullets.
At that time, that 3-year-old could have even heard the bullets. They would think that firecrackers. 20 years later, this year will make 20 years later, this child delivered a speech to all these political parties and the international community. Brilliant speech. That in those few minutes, recounting where we came from and why we were there and what we ought to do to stop it. And another young lady, Beulah Nimne, in her poetic work, when you listen to her poems, a poem of hope, of change, you see, many people still know that there is something called the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments are not only in the Bible, they are in the Quran. They are in all of the facets of human endeavor. That thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not... The gamut of the 10 Commandments tell us that the issue is still there. We are still there.
44 years ago.
And we are not going to give up. We're going to fight. To fight against this ignorance.
That's the final question. How do we...
This fighting against this ignorance, the arrogance associated thereof, and corruption. That we will fight to ensure justice. Justice for all. We must fight to ensure that, as we did before, when we said there will be justice, that justice, until we have that justice in our society, the struggle will continue. And struggle does not mean that people will go around killing people. No. It simply means that we will adopt. Why are we signing, even with our constitution existing, why did we go to Farmington, the UN, the international community, people, the ECOWAS, all of them came around and said, we should sign the Farmington Declaration. The Farmington Declaration is speaking about the same things we all say, the same thing we hear in the church, in the mosque. But just as a reminder, unless we commit ourselves to it, and nobody think that they will continue stealing, raking our country, violating Constitution, and killing innocent people who they may have disagreement with, and that all of such things will happen, and people will sit and do nothing about it. That is not true. People will continue to fight for justice. People will continue to ensure that justice will prevail in every facet of our lives. That our development will be measured and will be sustainable when it's all based on justice, fairness, truth, and forward looking.
Thank you so much. That is the voice of Senator Conmany B. Wesseh. He represents River G County at the Liberian Senate in the 54th legislature. Of course, he's going for re-election, but we're not talking about election today. We're discussing history. He's been speaking with us.
We're talking about election.
We're talking about election. Yeah, your election.
We have to ensure that good people are elected.
Okay, that's great.
We must always fight for good people to be elected. That's why we must always ask questions when so much our workers are not being paid. How come civil servants are not being paid? That they are in the street already.
Somebody is coming and saying, is the answer the question because in the legislature.
Why are we will continue. So you have a duty as a voter, and that's why you must register now. Register and wait on October 10 and elect the person who you know will pursue truth, pursue justice, pursue development to the best of our people, to ensure that our monies will be used to pay our teachers, to get the best teachers, to get our good doctors, our good nurses, to build roads. That is what you when you're going to vote, that's what you're asking for. That's the question you should always ask. How can this person and myself work together to get development for my society, for my community? Not who will do anything to, that get you one day's meal. I can tell you, one day meal can only take you to the place one day. As Oman Dudu used to say, Sekou Dudu. He said, Chief Sekou Dudu, he said, you know my children, when you can, you be man. When things come, you want eat it. He said, those who take things, you eat it quick. You get plenty of food, you alone sit down. You get your friend there, you're alone. You eat quick. He said, when you eat quick, your stomach will get full quick. When your stomach gets full quick, you will run quick to the bathroom. When you go in there quick, the people say something wrong with the man or the woman, the way she running in that place quick. When you run in there quick, you can die quick. And when you die quick, they bury you quick. My children, y'all take it easy. Take it easy. It's not a sign of being smart to eat quick and deny the rest of society, that the rest of our people should suffer because you want to eat quick to fill your stomach quick and become arrogant. No respect for the people, all of which come from extreme corruption. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Senator Conmany B. Wesseh. This is Prince Mobile. This is Focus on Liberia TV. We've been here for we went for 1 hour 25 minutes of interview, and we can just, if we had the time, we'll go for more than 2 hours because you can just end it. But thanks so much for speaking to us. Thanks for viewing. We have people commenting, of course, Senator Wesseh, you are in the legislature, correct the wrong. Senator Wesseh, during the 1979, you are in your 20s. What have you changed? And I think he has said it all. Thanks for following us. Thanks for watching. My name is Prince Mobile. Let me say hats off to my bosses in the U.S., Mr. Dennis Jah, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Focus on Liberia, Mr. Anthony C., who is the Operation Manager of Focus on Liberia there in the U.S. state of Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks for following. Do join me another time for another live video. Until the time, the name is Prince Mobile Video. Bye-bye. I love you.